Good morning, everyone, or good evening, depending on where you are. This is our June cafe. Um, and we're going to, just so you know, we're going to take a break in July and not do a cafe. We're going to figure out ways to do cafes which are more directed to specific markets so they can be in time zones that are more convenient for everyone. Um, Anyway, today's topic is sports management, which is one of the fastest growing business fields and one of the fastest growing academic fields in the United States over the past 10 or 20 years. We know that AI and cybersecurity get a lot of the flashing lights nowadays, but we also know that there's fantastic employment opportunities attached to sports management. And there's some programs, especially in the States and in Canada, which have done very well with people. So that's what we're doing today. We have two guests today. I'm going to introduce one at a time. Each of them will have a chance to present for a few minutes. So I'll start with Thomas Opio. Thomas is originally from Africa, and he lived in the UAE. He actually had a career in sport before he went sort of the academic path. I will say I have a little bit of a affection here because I lived in Dubai for 8 years, and then when I contacted Thomas, I found out that he lived in Dubai a little bit after me, but there's a little connection there as well. Thomas works at Arizona State University, which is one of the largest universities in the United States and has one of the largest numbers of international students in the United States. So I'm going to hand it over to Thomas. We'll see his presentation. If you have questions, for Thomas specifically, you can raise your hand during the presentation. But we're also going to have a Q&A session right after Thomas and Gracie speak. So Thomas, I'll hand it over to you and put myself on silent.
Thank you very much. Lovely introduction. Good morning, good evening, good night to everybody, depending on the different time zones. I'm very, very excited to be here to talk to you guys about, sports careers and things like that. As it, mentioned before, I have a background in sports, and that's one of the things that I'm, always excited about, even though, I'm in a different field now. I always enjoy giving back my experience in sports, to students and aspiring athletes, depending on all levels. I did compete professionally, college, high school. So, I have, pretty much all the background. But for today, looking into careers in sports, there are so many different options. And being at Arizona State University, one of the largest universities and most innovative university in the world, it's a pleasure for me to talk to you guys and share some of the options that we have. In general, we do have a lot of options for students to study, more than 300 degrees to choose from. However, today I'm just going to pick about 5 that are in sports to talk to you guys about and hopefully, get you guys excited. There are different ways that you can look at sports. You can look at it from the, competition aspect, from the, recreational aspect, et cetera. But maybe before I get to that, let me take a step back and show you guys where Arizona is. On the next slide, you're going to see, Arizona is, next to California, also, pretty close to Texas, 1 hour from California, by flight, 1 hour from, Las Vegas. Now that I recommend that you guys go to Las Vegas, but I know that most of you guys will probably find it, but pretty good located. In the next slide, you're going to see some of the some of the venues, or at least the scenery that we have. It's a very innovative university. Like I said, some of the rankings, #1 in innovation. We have 5 campuses to choose from. The main campus is in Tempe, Arizona. If we go to the next slide, one of the things that I'm usually excited about is to showcase how beautiful Arizona is. Most of you guys will probably think that, oh, Arizona is a desert, it's this and that. Yes, it is a semi-desert, but it does get cold. in the winter, it will probably be 0 degrees. So a lot of students, especially coming from India and other places in the world, they'll show up without, sweaters, and then the winter hits and they're like, nobody told me that it was this cold. As you can see on one of the pictures, they snow in the mountains and, that kind of stuff. Again, very, very beautiful campus, outdoor lifestyle. If you like, hiking and, that kind of stuff. Phoenix is one of the fastest growing cities in America right now. So many different companies and professional teams, especially the Phoenix Suns, the Coyotes, a lot of different clubs. Arizona State has one of the largest, sporting programs. We have, excellent swimmers, all that stuff. If you follow swimming, Michael Phelps is one of the coaches at Arizona State now. So there's a lot of different options. If you follow American football, we've had, quite great, football players. If you ever drive to Las Vegas, it's a, really tall bridge right over the Hoover Dam that is named after one of the Arizona State football players who passed away, during a war before. But anyways, on the next slide, what I wanted to cover is the 6 options or 5 options, let's put it that way, that we have for the as degrees for related to sports. This is actually the football stadium. It holds about 60,000 people. I always like to tell students that, and they'll look at it, they're like, wow, that's huge. But this is actually medium size in the US, because some of the venues hold more than 100,000 students or spectators for American football. So when it comes to degrees, as you guys are probably interested in, there are so many ways that you can go into sports. Again, there's the science aspect of it. There's a recreational sports, there's a competitive sports, depending on which way you want to look at it. There's a management aspect of it, from the athletic directors, the coaches, et cetera, et cetera. So the ones that I wanted to cover, the first one that I wanted to talk to you guys is, parks and recreation and sports management. This is a Bachelor of Science. Most people are going to be like, parks and recreation, how can that even be related to sports? Well, if you think about it, for a lot of people that are active, going into parks, et cetera, this is where you learn to design, parks and recreational, facilities that incorporate sports, whether that's volleyball, whether that's frisbee, whether that's, soccer, et cetera. So most of the parks, if you ever visit the US, some of the big recreational facilities, they have sporting, venues incorporated into them. And so this is, if you want to go into the route of parks and recreation, but also be able to, design facilities that will incorporate sports, for societies and communities. This is one of those degrees where you can have a concentration in sports management, from parks and recreation aspect of things. Very similar to that, another concentration within this field that you can have is what we call community sports management. So there is a design aspect of the parks and recreation and sporting facilities, but then there's a management aspect of it. So if you think about it, how do you organize a 5K that the community can get involved in? How do you organize, sports camps for youth, for community members? Nowadays, people want to be very, very active. Everybody has a, Fitbit, they're tracking how many steps are they doing, they're monitoring the heart rate. Communities are very active. But so this degree is going to allow you to have the skills to be able to organize community sports, from a recreational aspect of the sporting, for sports. This is what I like to call the weekend warriors, people that want to stay active, but not, be too competitive. So this, concentration, community sports and management is going to give you that aspect of, sports degree. And careers that you can go into. Very wide range of careers, like I'm just mentioning, anything to do with, community sports management, which is a lot, most people, a lot of Americans, especially, and people around the world, they aspire to run a marathon. Well, how do you organize a marathon? This is, things that, you get those skills in. Counseling and applied psychological services. Again, psychology, counseling, people are probably thinking, how is that related to sports? But then you can have a concentration in sports performance and counseling. again, think about this, a lot of, sports, if you're doing, working with youth sports, et cetera, psychological, focus and challenges are going to be there, where people will have anxiety, where people might have, health issues, et cetera. So being able to, to approach sports from a psychology aspect, working with athletes, that might need psychological services, et cetera, or support, counseling, all those things. This degree is going to help you, become a psychologist and work with athletes. So this is, depending on which, field you want to go into, whether it's clinical and that kind of stuff. One of my favorites, I have to say, because of my background, is exercise wellness, which is going to be a concentration in strength and conditioning. This is where, if you want to be not just a personal trainer, this is, way more deeper than personal training. This is where you look at athletes, where you're working with a basketball player, you're working with a soccer player, you're working with athletics, you're working with gymnastics. What skills or what muscles does a gymnast use? What muscles does a soccer player use? And how do you enhance, the training aspect of the athlete? Not coaching, but this is performance training. What speed does that athlete need? What agility, what stamina, that kind of stuff. So strength and conditioning, if you want to work in developing athletes, from a performance aspect, this is what you go into, which is, strength and conditioning. The last one that I want to bring to you guys' attention is, within that, which is going to be sports science and performance. But then again, this is programming aspect of it. Sports science, which is very similar to strength and conditioning. However, this is looking at the science aspect of it. It's almost like physiology, looking at the Fitbit, how are these, tools being designed, and how applicable is it to, to everyday use? So this is going to be the scientist behind the scenes who's analyzing every single data for all the sports, tools, performance tools that we are using, whether that's a speed radar and all that stuff. Knowing how to create or to make a speed radar or analyze the data coming out of a speed radar, or any kind of sports analysis, this is going to be the aspect of it. And there's always the business, business degrees with a concentration in sports. And this is for students that want an aspect just of management of sports, from, athletic directors, to coaches, to, working with just regular athletes, performance athletes. So there's so many different options that you can look into it. I just wanted to give you guys some of these concentrations in a very, digestible way. Hopefully it's going to spark, a lot of questions and curiosity in wanting to know. But like I said, you can approach it from psychology aspect of it. You can approach it from strength and conditioning. You can approach it from recreational. Whatever you're looking for, Arizona State has it. So
Thomas, this
Yes.
is really great. Thank you. And before we go to the next speaker, I have just one question.
Yes.
In the United States, over the past 20, 30 years, there's been a concerted government and private effort to involve women in sports more. It has so many benefits. Is there any data now? Because we have women's soccer teams and basketball teams and everything. Is there any data on the number of women participating in this?
Yes, actually, the fastest growing field of participation in sports is actually in women. And this is
Okay.
why you find a lot of companies, when they start up, they're focusing on women, because those are actually going to be the most dedicated, and also going to be, it's actually one of the fastest growing. And also they're going to be the most disciplined, because as you know, in sports, it's not about your talent. Discipline is what's going to take you the farthest. Also, if you look at, how improvement in sports, right? For example, a few weeks ago, a lady, I think she might be from Kenya, she just broke the world record in the 5K. That world record the time that she's running now is very similar, very close to Division 2 and Division 3 men 5K athletes. So if you look at how fast the world records are falling, they're actually faster in women than they are in men. So
thank you very much.
Yeah.
This is great. I really appreciate it. And we'll get to the Q&A later. Right now, we're going to switch to Gracie Castillo. Everyone, Gracie works at Westcliff University, which is I have a bias because it's in Orange County in Southern California, and I can drive there anytime I want, but I visited Westcliff and it's a wonderful place and we've had success with it. Gracie's been in international education for quite a while. And she actually went and studied in Russia a while ago. So her experience in international ed started in Russia. Gracie, go ahead and present, please.
Great. Thank you so much, Pat. And hello, everyone. Nice meeting you. And thank you for joining us today. Uh, so as Pat was saying, yes, our home campus is located in Southern California. And if we'll go to the next slide, we can just see that on the map. Right, so you can see I'm located in Irvine, right there with the little Westcliff icon in Southern California and California. And that is our main campus, but we also have two more locations in Los Angeles and then in Miami, Florida. And just a little bit about all of those locations. They're known for their tourism, they're known for their entertainment, and then California specifically, very similar to Arizona, as Thomas was saying, a lot of outdoor activities, a lot of different things to do. And then specifically Los Angeles and Irvine, home to a lot of high school, collegiate, and professional sports. So once I get into the sports management aspect and what we can provide at our university, we'll talk about those details. But in terms of opportunities, it is there in Southern California and also Miami. And then a little bit about Irvine specifically. Irvine is known as the city of innovation. For many of you who are not familiar, they are a developing tech industry, or an entrepreneurial hub. So a lot of different startups, a lot of different diverse companies looking for different ways to connect. Thomas was mentioning that we're moving into a wave of fitness, of personal individualized companies, and that is what you're going to see in Irvine. So anything that you have your mind at in what you want to dip in, whether it's related to sports, whether it's related to tech, there's ways to connect that in Irvine. We were voted the best city to live according to time.com, and we are the #1 safest city according to our demographics in FBI statistics. And then just a little bit about our university. This past academic year, we had just under 5,000 students enrolled, and our diversity represented is very, very similar to the diversity of Irvine, which is the most diverse in Orange County. We represent over 100 different nationalities. And then with our support, our students have 85% job placement, which is either in the US or in their home country. So we really want to make sure that coming out of your degree program, you have a foot in the door somewhere that you want to get into. So if we go to the next slide, I'll talk about our programs. So we've got 4 different colleges: our College of Business, College of Technology and Engineering, College of Education, and College of Law. When I talk about the sports management program, that will be located within the College of Business, but for your interest, these are the breadth of our programs. You can see our degrees from bachelor's, master's, and doctorate, but we do have several certificates if you just want to add skills to what you're already learning. And then we've got a handful of concentrations in each college under each degree. So there's a lot of different ways that you can be flexible with your education and with your experience. But going into sports management, let's look at that concentration on the next slide. Okay, so the sports management concentration is within our BBA. And so what this does is it gives our students experience in leadership, management, entrepreneurship, but then it also connects all of those aspects with the sports industry market and their goals. For you, you will be able to combine your experiences in athletics with strategies. So understanding how that works on an organizational level, on a management level, and being able to use that to the best of your ability when you get into the professional field. You can see the 5 courses specifically that make up that sports management concentration, and how we will be able to apply it both on a theoretical experience and a practical experience. So as I was saying, Westcliff has just under 5,000 students enrolled, but we still have 20 different sports, meaning that we have a large chunk of our population involved in athletics, and many of them use the opportunities that we have for our professional networking. So our career services department is able to work with you to help you get those connections and use from our own athletic network into those collegiate pathways or professional pathways in the field. So we can offer you that the networking there, but also the experience. So within our own athletics department, we have open positions to get your feet wet, to get that experience while you're studying and applying those theories. It's extremely collaborative. So you can work from within different teams, and then you can also work in different aspects. They are looking for everything from marketing experience, digital and social media experience, as well as all of the things that come with working on a team, as Thomas was mentioning, conditioning, sports training, team management, right? Events planning. We have all of those different aspects within managing our own teams, and we are very, very open to having student interaction and participation on those levels. So from there, you can really, as Thomas was pointing out, you can really do a lot with sports management, and in both places you have a lot of opportunities to just figure out what path you want. So really that's about Westcliff, and either way, we hope that you come to the US and take advantage of, as Pat was saying, this growing industry, because it's there. So. Oh, Pat, I think you're muted.
Yep.
Before we go on to the general Q&A, one of the career paths you have there is a recruiter.
Oh,
And
yeah.
is recruiting like scouting athletes to bring them to a university or bring them to a professional team? What do we mean by recruiter?
Right, great question. So yes, recruiting would be those aspects. So you're working with the athletics department or the sports specifically. You're looking for talent that could be, depending on the strategy of that team, that could be locally searching or national or at the international level. That's
Okay.
actually really interesting that you brought up recruiting, because that is one of the things that I was speaking about with our career services department. He has a lot of experience helping the athletes that he works with going into some form of recruitment as one of their first steps in the professional field. So yeah.
So I don't know about the college data, but in professional baseball in America, somewhere between 35 and 38% of the players were not born in the United States. And I think it's a slightly lower in professional basketball and in soccer or world football. Don't get me going. With that, I hand it over to Catherine. Catherine, did you want to lead the Q&A part?
Yes, I did. Thank you guys so much for that. I mean, it's first and foremost, I actually have a question. What kind of trends are you seeing with regard to international students enrolling in sports management programs? I know we hear a lot about MBAs, we're hearing tech. What are we seeing in the last 2 to 5 years with international enrollment? Let's start with Thomas. I'm just going to put you on the spot, and then we'll get to Gracie right after.
Yeah, well, this has actually been very, very interesting. I'm seeing a lot of interest to begin with in sports everywhere that I travel. I mean, I'm in Latin America, I'm in Africa, I'm in Middle East. One of the trends that I'm seeing is actually that athletes are getting better internationally. It used to be a lot more hit and miss, but now athletes, and especially when it comes to, basketball and things like that, one of the trends that I'm noticing, and I'm going to say this and put myself on the spot, I do believe in the next 15 years and 20 years, the best basketball players will now be coming from the US. I'm going to pick West Africa as, you know, one of the places, because if you look at it, I don't know how many of you guys know, but the average height for a male in Mali is 6'5". That's the average height for somebody.
You're breaking my heart here, Thomas. I'm a big basketball fan. You're really hurting my heart right now.
It's global. It is global. The other trend is always been and is growing. You know, more than 80% of tennis players are international.
Right.
Okay.
Because you know, tennis is not very, you know, very well played in the US as compared to. But one of the unique things that I'm noticing though is that governments are getting involved in sports management, and, you know, having students sponsored to study in the US to go back and do, you know, organized sports. So for example, a lot of, you know, government, you know, visions, I'm thinking about UAE as an example, Saudi Arabia, et cetera, you know, within their vision, they have sports as one of the initiatives, you know, that is going to be, you know, nationwide. So this is actually growing. One of the unique trends that I'm also seeing is countries getting involved in organizing international competitions. Think about Qatar. You know, everybody was talking about the World Cup, et cetera, et cetera. That is a trend that I'm noticing. And that is also leading to students coming to study, you know, sports related fields in management to be able to pull off these government initiatives that they want to do in their home countries.
Wow. Thank you so much. And I'm going to go over to Gracie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just first of all, to open, our school is more practical based experiences for students. So when we take our student athletes, we are trying to encourage them to look into their profession after their collegiate career and athletic career in college. But that being said, I just want to note that our development of our sports management concentration was an effort, because we're seeing this interest, right, in staying in the athletics realm, in staying in the US. And this was an effort to make that connection for not just our international students, but our domestic athletes as well. So just that note, we have noticed an interest in the passion, in the continuation of working in athletics, and that is why we have this, and one of the reasons why we're part of this cafe, because we recognize that is growing. Now, that being said, we are an international school in the sense that, like, we take a lot of international students compared to other colleges of our size. And so we've always been really lucky, and we've always noticed that there is international athletic talent, and especially with our soccer teams. And now that we see a bigger popularity in the US in soccer, this is really exciting, because we can make that connection for specifically like those players to know, like, hey, there is life in soccer here in the US. You don't have to go back to your home country to do that. There are connections. So it's really exciting to see that involvement at the US level now, because, you know, even 10 years ago, I couldn't tell you that we had a developed market in soccer here. So that's really, really great.
Thank you, Gracie. I mean, it all makes sense. Sports is the only universal language that we all have. So it's such a great talk to be talking about. I'm going to move on to Pavni in the audience. You've got your hand raised there. I will, if you want to start your video, you can, and if you don't, that's fine.
Yeah. Hi, Catherine, and hi, team. Thanks for giving this opportunity. And it was a great session, because we never had this kind of session when it comes to sports alone. And thank you all for your efforts. The recent question that I've received from one of my students was, he's a sports player. So he was checking during the academics, can he take a break, come back to India and, play for nationals that he's into? And again, maybe are they allowed to take long breaks or, take shorter credits? Is there any possibility for it?
I'm going to put Gracie on the spot first.
Okay, so that's a great question, Pavani. So just a caveat, I work with international outreach, so I work with students as a whole for study abroad, but I'm like connected adjacently to the athletics department in this field. While I can't give a direct answer on that because I believe that is part of the recruitment and the contract basically that the student comes into with the team, I can say that for international students, it does depend on their status in the US and their academic experience thus far. So you are eligible for breaks after a certain period of time, whether that conflicts with competition on our team at our university and our studies and your status as a student. It really is a case-by-case basis, and it will be dependent on how long and what the student is
Yeah.
going for and that kind of thing. So that's what I'm going to say right now. And it's one of those things that you're just going to have to wait until you get to that bridge, perhaps.
Thomas, did you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I think if I understood the question correctly, is whether a student athlete can take a break to go back home and continue, do some competition. So the quick answer to that is yes, depending on the sport. So for example, when I was competing, competing for the US, there are competitions out, international that you take part in. So for example, in the summer, there could be world championships going on. Athletes are going to have a chance to go to world championships. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but a lot of the athletes in the Olympics are actually college athletes, especially swimming and some of the sports. So those breaks are within especially if it's a big prestigious competition. Now, if the athlete is again, I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. If the athlete is borderline, then the coach is going to ask a lot of questions because again, US competition, depending on the sport, is going to be very, very stiff. I always tell, parents and students and counselors, that if I picked, the top 10, athletes, let's say in athletics, and from the NCAA, I work very closely with the NCAA. If I took the top 10 kids from the NCAA to the Olympics, there would only be one team that will beat those kids, and that would be the US team. Because if you look at the NCAA records, they are faster than 99% of the country's national records. So to the short answer to the question is yes, depending on the competition, students can take a break to go to compete.
And Pavani, just to close this out, the short answer is yes. The long answer is you got to talk to the immigration folks, the PDSO on campus, and the coach. But it's possible and it happens all the time. So, Catherine, next question.
All right, so
Great,
I think
thanks.
Rohan was next, if you wanted to go.
Thank you, Catherine. Hi, everyone. It was quite an informative presentation, especially for my region. I'm based out in Mumbai, and sports management and, to know more about it is always working out in my favor. We have a lot of students who want to know more about it. So to start off with my question, I have 2-point questions. I firstly wanted to understand, especially this is coming from a lot of the students and agents, like, the international students who are working in the sports management, in the US after graduation. So I wanted to understand how great the scope is, and do we have any popular ones as well who are working in the industry?
Thomas?
Yeah. So the question, I think, what opportunities are available for students to work in the industry? Listen, if I could be frank, opportunities in the US are endless, as long as a student applies themselves. What I'm thinking about to begin with is OPT, right? Students, have an opportunity to, and especially if the program is categorized as a Bachelor of Science, they can do up to 3 years of actual work and then come back and finish their degree, or they can do the program in the end, after the program. So especially usually for international students, if they apply themselves and, they do internships or they work with, different teams, a lot of times they're going to get jobs. So for example, we do have quite a bit of international students who are working in the athletics department right now. So those students were doing a sports related, major, but then they applied to become a tutor, tutoring or working with the athletics department, to tutor, regular athletes, that are in the program. And so they worked in that department for several years. Some other students who have a background, let's say in soccer or a popular sport in the US, came to the US in doing sports related degrees, and then they would approach a coach and see if there's positions to become a sports manager for the team, a team manager. You can be a manager as an undergrad or even a grad student. And some of the teams actually do have scholarships for their team managers, athletic scholarships. So there's endless opportunities. And I have seen a lot of students stay on to the US, and they're sponsored by the company that they're working with to continue to work in the, in that field.
So I'd like to tell a story. The basketball coach of the Miami Heat professional team is a man named Eric Spoelstra. He's a Filipino American. He played basketball in Portland, Oregon, and he got a job as a video organizer for the Miami Heat 30 years ago, and he's now the head coach. So there's many pathways for this. It's just a great testimonial. So, Pat, you want to go to the next question? I think it was Sarah.
I
or
just
Jennifer.
had another question to add on to that, Pat. I wanted to understand about the international students, what is the job scope once they come back to their home country?
Gracie, did you want to touch that?
Gracie, go.
It's okay. Yeah, we can let Thomas go first, because he does have experience in athletics directly. I know some statistics with our international students and their careers after, but I'd like to let Thomas go first, please.
Yeah, so I think probably to reference what Gracie has said, employability for a lot of students studying in the US is actually very high, and especially if they go back home with actual work experience from the CPT or PT, or they've applied themselves to work. The last time I saw our statistics, I think it was above 90%. A lot of the students, by the time they graduate, already have jobs lined up before they go back home. Again, it just so happens that most of our students who come and do sports, they come from developing countries and developed countries like India, and so the employability is pretty high, and especially knock on wood, US experience and expertise in sports or in any field is highly regarded because of the training that you get while a student and also working in the US. So it's pretty high employability prospect, and we've never had, at least for my experience, because I do keep in touch with our students when they graduate, I've never had a student come back to say, I'm struggling to find a job back home.
All right.
Right.
Thank you.
And just to add to that, one of the things that students do learn trying to look for jobs and connections in the US is networkability. And within the athletics department itself, it is extremely hands-on in terms of like who you're talking to, what that might mean in the future. Those students are going to take that back to their home country. They're going to figure it out. And I have no doubt that there's ways to get into the field. So I know that's a very good question, concern for your students, but like in terms of post graduate success, postgraduate career opportunities, it's there, and they get the skills that they know to look for that.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
I think this might bleed into our next question. I think Sarah, you're next.
Thank you, Kat. I do have a couple of questions. I would like to begin with what work opportunities are there for Canada in sports management? And I'm not sure if are either of you familiar?
Within Canada, you mean like studying in the US and then finding work opportunities in Canada, you mean? Is that?
Correct.
Yeah, so I mean, Canada is I'm familiar with University of UVic, for example. They do have great opportunities in sports because, again, if you look at sports programs in Canada, they're not as amplified as the US, but there's sporting options in almost every university. So we've had students finish their degree in the US and then work in Canada. We've had a lot of Canadian athletes studying in the US, especially in things like field hockey, basketball, athletics. I think Arizona State has had quite a number of Canadian athletes come in. In fact, the national team for Canada in athletics, they train in the winter at Arizona State. So the job prospects are almost as good, I would say, as in the US, because Canada is also a big country when it comes to sports.
Amazing. Sarah, did you have another question that you wanted to get to?
Yes, Kat. So let's say we have a student that has a different background, let's say business or engineering, sorry. And this person is interested in pursuing a career in sports management. In your experience, how do you see that this student will be able to enroll and to have a visa approved since he's changing careers and maybe he's in his late 30s or so?
Amazing. Gracie, did you want to touch that?
Yeah, I can start with that just because our program is hand in hand with our business degree. So Sarah, that kind of background is actually something that is seen as a benefit in many job positions within any field, but also within sports management. We want strategy. We want expertise in certain aspects of an organization, and business is going to have that. It has the different tactical aspects of thinking about how to run and manage events, teams, different kinds of things. And so in terms of that, again, students need to have the open mind of how they apply that skill, that experience into the sports field. Thomas and I have been discussing in our degree programs how we bridge that gap with the networking, with the hands-on experience that we can both provide at our universities. So that is something that the students are going to get, and coming out, they'll be able to use that and pitch themselves to any given organization of saying, hey, I've had this experience, this is how we're going to apply it, or this is what my vision is in applying it. So it is possible.
And
Yeah, and to add to that, sorry to cut you off, to Sarah, I think one of the unique things about the US, and again, I mean, hopefully I understood your question correctly. What you choose in high school is not what you stay with, right? And that's the uniqueness, is that well-rounded individual that US universities is able to create. That is actually one of the advantages that that has. And so having a different background is actually an advantage. For me, having a sports background and now doing international education, I believe I'm much better at my job because I can do both really well, and I can combine both and find a way to to create pathways for students. So having a different background in management and then adding sports is actually a major advantage to students. So it's not going to be a roadblock. It's actually an advantage. And coming to study in the US, with a business degree, wanting to come to do sports is not going to be looked at negatively by even the visa officers at the US consulates.
And let me make, generally speaking, in US education, the idea of diversity also includes diversity of thought within a program. So especially at the graduate level, you want people who were engineers and others who were business people and others who were English teachers. You want that mixture, that rich mix of diversity for problem solving and discussion in class. It's not unusual. So great
Well,
question,
thank you
Sarah.
for that question, Sarah. I know it's late in the Philippines, but I'm going to move over to Ariel.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Gracie, Thomas. This is a very interesting discussion, especially here in the Philippines, because, sports management is, I probably think it's not that popular here in the Philippines. Well, we do have a bachelor's degree in education that focuses on physical education, but not so much with what you guys have discussed. So and some of the athletes that we have, like Manny Pacquiao, like Hydran Diaz and Carlos Yulo, they actually went through camps and not in universities, and they've had trainings for long years. So very interesting. So my question is, are these sports management degrees always business degrees, or can they be like physical education or STEM?
Thomas, you were moving your head first, so you get to
Yeah,
go.
so I think a lot of them actually are very diverse. That's why I was saying that, within Arizona State, you can even look at it from community management in sports, which is almost very similar to the camps that you're talking about, except a little bit, the camps and, well, internationally, most of the athletes that come through the camp system, whereas in the US is a very diverse, and that's one of the, I think what makes, the US competitions athletes so good is because of the diversity that they come from. But no, you can even approach it from psychology aspect of it. That's what I was talking about, where you can go into psychology and then have a concentration in, sports where you work with athletes with psychological challenges. Again, mental focus and one of the reasons that I would probably argue that, people like Manny Pacquiao was so good is because they can tune their brain, into the fight that they're getting into, but not every athlete has that. Mental challenges and roadblocks is one of the big things that actually is coming up, because now people can talk about it. At least when I was competing, I internalized everything and my focus was very different. I didn't have, so many distractions. But the other one that actually might be interesting for you will be what I talked about, the exercise wellness, which is the strength and conditioning, right? This is where you find, the person behind the scenes creating a program that is going to be unique for a boxer, right? What strength, agility and speed does a boxer need versus a soccer player? Right? If you ever watched, when, soccer players are running, they're taking these little short steps, but when you watch Usain Bolt running, he's taking long steps. What is the difference? They're both sprinting. And that's where, things like strength and conditioning come in, but all these are bachelors of science and, they're STEM, categorized as STEM degrees.
Great answer, Thomas. Gracie, did you want to add anything to that?
No, nothing else. Just because our programs right now, we are concentrated on the business aspect. We are looking to expand into different fields, especially with the health aspect of things. But Ariel, just know that it's out there. It doesn't just have to be business.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I actually was intrigued with the discussion earlier because I didn't know that could be the scope of sports management. In fact, I even thought that, people here in the Philippines, they can be coaches anytime they want to. But I didn't know that there is a professional thing, professional education behind that. So great discussion. I really loved it.
Thank you, guys. And I think we have one more question. We've got Genevieve in the audience. If you want to go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Thanks, everybody. I'm speaking from Africa, and you all know that Africa is one of, we are very good with sports, football, and the rest of it all. So this is really a very lovely topic for us. And coming to questions, a lot have asked similar questions, but there was something Thomas said regarding OPT. It wasn't really clear. So I just want to know, what's the difference between having OPT after your bachelor's program, that of the master's program? Are there difference, or is it just same thing that applies for both?
I think the only differences will be when you choose to do it. I believe CPT and Gracie, you can correct me, is done, within the semester, before you graduate. Whereas OPT is optical practical training usually is done after students.
I didn't understand that reference to Victor. What's this complaint? Okay, you sent it. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so it's all good. So I would probably say, and also the other difference is the length. OPTs, usually, especially depending on if the program is categorized as STEM, you get longer, longer time period up to 3 years. Whereas the other ones, if it's not a STEM focused program, is going to be shorter. So usually that's really the differences. I mean, from my personal experience, I always tell students to have the actual work experience before they graduate. Because when you graduate, the government gives you 6 months to find a placement, before your visa, begins to expire. But if you can do it, let's say, your first semester in your senior year, then you still have, the buffer zone, in case you can't find something right away. But obviously, career services, as Grace was talking about, they're so good at placing students if students are involved. Like, talking about sports days, again, I mean, US has so many opportunities. The only challenge for students, and especially international students, is that those opportunities are not going to come to you. You have to go and seek those opportunities. They're there for free. It's just students have to be proactive to go get them. So hopefully I was able to address your questions in
So sorry,
And
if it's that easy, like, sorry, if it's that easy as you said, like, is it that the school management helps students, precisely international students, like, do they assist the students to get such jobs?
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly, yeah. Gracie, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So Genevieve, just to add to that, I can't stress enough what Thomas just said. It is up to the student. We have the opportunities, we have the resources, we have the people open to just assisting. We have these networks. But the students, all they need to do is ask. All they need to do is ask and just see what might be open to them. And we can help get that first step of just seeing what is out there for them. But just a little bit of difference between bachelor's and master's. If there's a difference, it's going to be with CPT. So OPT, as we said, it's postgraduate work experience, and that is given to every student who graduates from a US accredited university, an eligible program. So that is automatically given for 1 year, with the except of STEM students who can apply to extend, right? But with CPT, that is while they study, and this is what we highly recommend, right? We want them to have experience before they graduate, because obviously that placement, it's going to come fast. They might be panicked. Doing it while they study gives them a little bit more time to figure out what they want. And CPT is the way to do that. Now, for bachelor students at Westcliff, and it's different with every university, at Westcliff, bachelors are eligible for CPT after 1 academic year. For master's and doctorate students, CPT, they are eligible as soon as they are enrolled in their studies. So it's just a bit of a faster pathway for them. But in either case, all students are at Westcliff, at least, are eligible for CPT eventually, once they show their eligibility. And that gives them the opportunity to look for those opportunities sooner rather than later. And it gives them time to breathe, if that makes sense.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to be more deep. Like, what kind of jobs are available? Okay, for someone that wants to manage gym or the stadium, what kind of jobs? Students that want to ask deep questions, like real deep questions. What kind of jobs are available?
The sky is the limit. There's a lot of options for jobs. Again, I mean, it just depends on what. Again, I mean, so if I were to give an example about, myself going into college, as a student athlete, I went to college, on a sports scholarship. So I was just focused in that. And one time I got a note from one of my professors, and she said, come see me in my office hours. I looked at my paper, I had an A, and I'm like, why do I need to come see you? I have an A, so I ignored that. She sent me another note and I completely ignored it. I'm like, in my mind, I only need to go see my professor if I have a problem, and I don't have a problem. I'm passing the class. Why do I need to go see it? And long story short, that professor ended up being the best mentor that I ever had. because of how connected she was. And I didn't know that. I only saw that person sitting in the classroom. Now, to your question, what opportunities or kind of jobs are there? Again, I mean, it's a career progression, so if you working as a student, student athlete, it could be, as I said before, some of the students will come in and they'll apply for a job as a team manager. So that is a person who is going to be helping the coach organize, setting up the, the training facilities, et cetera, et cetera. And again, you progress from that. When you graduate, then, there's other opportunities that go from there. So again, it's a progression. As Pat just mentioned, the head coach for the, Miami, Heat, the basketball team, started as a in the video room. And then, they just progressed, throughout the career. So how you apply yourself, and how you are proactive. And also one of the unique things that I've noticed, and again, I've traveled all throughout the world, I always credit US systems for picking up talent. US is very, very good at identifying talent. So if a student worker is there and they are working with the athletic department is going to pick out that talent very, very well. So if they're talented in what they're doing, I can guarantee you the sky is the limit.
So I want to, before we close, I want to say that Gracie made a great comment. U.S. universities, if you want help getting a career, help enrolling in a class, mental health, if you want help with your personal health, if you want to network with businesses or faith-based organizations, whatever you want to do, universities have these resources. And they desperately want you to come and say, I have a question. Please help me get a job. They love it when students walk in. And some university systems around the world don't have these sort of what we call wraparound services. So when you're recruiting students, let them know that. And we're running out of time. So I got to say, this was really an invigorating session today. I learned a lot. Thomas, thank you so much for bringing your experience.
Can I just ask one question, last one, if we have time?
Go ahead.
So sorry about that, but I've been listening to the whole conversation. This is Shivali here from India, Mumbai. And thank you, Gracie, and thank you, Thomas, for this, very interactive session, especially on sports. And I just wanted to check, because quite a few students who are very good at sports, but not academically, doing well. Do they get some kind of a benefit on the tuition fees, like a scholarship, because they have, excel in the sports? When we talk about scholarship, it's always the emphasis on the academics to evaluate them, to judge them. How about the sports scholarship that they could, get? At both undergraduate and postgraduate?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a very easy question, and actually a very great question. Thanks for asking. If you are recruited by a US coach, and especially in the big programs, that I'm just going to use Arizona State as an example, you do get a sports scholarship in addition to any academic scholarship that you get. So the two are separate. And usually, again, athletic departments have a huge budget. I believe, the operating budget for our athletic department is more than $50 million a year. So, again, it ranges from, from team to team. However, what I will say is this: the academic support given to student athletes is absolutely bar none. Regular students cannot even come close to that. So you have a dedicated academic advisor, faculty mentor, and a learning specialist, in addition to your coach. So you have 4 people looking at your academics. The learning specialist is going to look at how you learn and create or guide you into classes. The academic advisor is looking at the classes that you register into. You have unlimited tutoring, free printing, everything. Most athletic departments have their own academic facilities. So I would say, if a student comes in and let's say they're borderline on their GPA, they would, if they fail classes, is because they wanted to fail, not because they're that difficult. So for example, when I came to college, coming from a high school in Phoenix, I came to to a university and I was like, I have a scholarship, and I get into this big class and I'm like, oh, they don't take attendance. So I'm gonna, go to practice and go back to the dorm and sleep. Within 1 week, the coach knew that I was keeping classes. What I didn't know is that the athletic department has paid student workers who will come to class and make sure that we are in class. I didn't know that. So it's a very well-rounded service, as Pat was mentioning. So
also, just really quickly to add to that, Shivali, you should know that there are different divisions of sports at the collegiate level, and therefore there are different levels of focus in terms of athletics and academics. So depending on your students' needs, you should really be looking at location, at competition, at the divisions, just so you can see what kinds of support they get in terms of that focus. Now, I agree with Thomas. There is, bar none, the support that students get as a student athlete is there because they want to make sure you succeed on both fronts. You're an athlete and you're a student. However, you should bear in mind that these different divisions, these different competition schedules, it does help, especially if there's stress, if there's mental wellness that we're concerned about. That's something to consider. So please talk to the colleges, please understand how these students and these different teams are playing with their athletes and what that means for a prospective athlete of yours.
Great. And is there a particular concentration if a student wants to, just look at a particular sports rather than, the generic aspect of it? Is there a way that he could do that? Maybe from, an athlete's perspective and career perspective.
Concentration is in majors, you mean, or concentration is in...
Yes, majors.
Yeah, I mean, if you come in as on a sports scholarship, I know we're talking about sports management. If you come in on a sports scholarship, you don't have to major in sports. You are free to major in whatever you want to, your career to be. A lot of student athletes, will do business related degrees. We have a lot of engineering students. And I don't know if you follow, but if you look at most of the athletic department, it just so happens that the athletic departments have the highest GPS because those are some of the smartest students. A lot of athletes are double majors or double, they have double degrees. So really the sky is the limit as far as the field that you want to go into. Again, what we are trying to emphasize is the level of support that these athletes are going to have is bar none.
Great. Thank you so much for that.
All right. Well, I think we've definitely run out of time, so I would just love to thank everybody for being here in the audience. Thomas and Gracie, this was such a fun conversation. And we have both of your schools on our platform. So for any of the students that any of our RPs have, please check out Arizona State and Westcliff University. And Pat, did you want to do some closing comments?
I do not. I think it was such a rich conversation. I want to thank Thomas, Gracie, and all of the participants because it was really interactive. Have a great day, everyone. I know in the Philippines it's probably 10 o'clock at night, so have a nice evening,
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
See you guys.